This lecture by Sarah Hannah Radcliffe was presented in conjunction with Project Derech, a 60-page booklet entitled Producing Lovable Children can be obtained by making a contribution to Project Derech of $18 or over. Please mail to 16 Frontenac Avenue, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, M5N1Z5. Tax-deductible receipts will be issued.
There's a beautiful mitzvah that we have called Keep It Up Aim. It is so beautiful, this mitzvah, that, it is almost the core of everything as far as, I'm looking into it more and more when I'm teaching in parenting classes, the halakhas of Derech, Eretz, which really come down to the halakhas of respecting everybody. But we learn this respect first at home, in our home, with our parents, with our siblings, with our family. We are learning everything there is to know about respectful human interactions. The mitzvah of Keep It Up Aim makes sure that we can teach our children things about respect because it empowers us as parents. A lot of what goes wrong today in our houses, in society at large, and even in our Jewish homes, is that there is a lack of authority on the part of the parents, a true authority that enables them to guide their children, pass on their heritage, teach their values, and be of service to their children. When we're trying to raise our kids as peers, that, a democratic process where we all take a vote on everything, this is a failed experiment. Even the secular world is finding this. I was at a workshop just last week with a secular psychologist who was teaching almost what we're trying to teach when we teach the mitzvah of Keep It Up Aim. Because he's finding, this particular man who's written a big book on the subject, whatever, that the conduct disorders that they're seeing in the secular world, where children don't obey their parents, don't have any respect for their parents, lock their parents out of their houses and run off and do what they want and open a very big mouth a lot of the time, that these problems are related to parents not having established proper authority in the true sense of the word authority, which does not mean a firm hand and a smack and whatever. It means that the child looks up to his parents, that we have given the children something to look up to, that children are getting from us both the structure and guidance plus the nurturing that is so essential to them. And because they come to us then for this nurturing and for this guidance, and they trust us. Now, the Torah helps us to establish all of this. We have a key on how to do it. When we teach the halachas of Keep It Up Aim in our homes, we are helping to establish these essential boundaries so the children will know that they are children and that they have parents. And they can trust us to stay in the parental role. Now, this is not as easy as it sounds. I mean, we have help here, but I'm going to be more specific because it's also an emotional problem for us. It's hard for us to always stay in the parent-adult role, especially when a child tells you that he hates you, for example, or that he thinks you're mean and unfair, or that, he's running away from home. It's hard for us to maintain our dignity and stay in the parental role. I'm going to give us some hints on how to do that. But the halachas themselves help us to provide a structure for that. Even, as Mrs. Roque is saying, when we ask a child to say, please excuse me, or may I please be excused, before he leaves our presence at the table. Or even when, as the halacha asks, the child waits for us to start eating before he starts to eat his meal. Or when he remembers to honor us by not sitting in our chair, or for rising for us. The child's supposed to stand for us as we enter a room twice a day. And as archaic as this may sound in 1997, it is possible to get our children to do this, and then it instills in them a feeling of importance for their parents. There is something special about the person that you rise for. And there are many such halachas that we can bring in, but the one we're going to focus on tonight are the particular halachas of speech, of how a child is supposed to speak to his parents, for reasons of Keep It Up Aim, of honoring and revering parents. But when we look at it closely, we'll see that this is how a child should speak to everybody. This is how every person should speak to everybody. This is how husbands should speak to wives and wives to husbands. This is how people should speak to each other in the store and on the street, for reasons of Derech Eretz. And we'll look at it quite in detail and see why. When we allow our children to speak in a different way, in a less than respectful way, we and they pay a heavy price. First of all, we don't like children with a big mouth. If that child's living in our house and telling us what to do and not cooperating with what we ask him to do, we find it difficult to extend the love and affection and nurturing that every child deserves. And therefore, the child ends up feeling a little bit less than loved, develops perhaps low self-esteem, develops a poor relationship with you. And then we have big problems emotionally for everybody in the family. So we are not helping children when we do not insist that they fulfill the halacha of speaking and conducting themselves respectfully. Because it helps us to like them, for them to be likable people when they know how to present their issues to us. It's all right for children not to like everything that we say. For example, if the child would like to go sleep over at his friend's house and we are thinking about it and we decide, no, it's not a good idea. We're not asking that the child has to like that. We can say that the child is allowed to be disappointed. He's allowed to express his disappointment. But he can always do that in a respectful way. And that is the key. If we will show children how to express their feelings, their disappointment, their frustration, as well as their joyful feelings, in a respectful way, then we are going to have people who can go ahead into life and as good marriage partners, as these people will be able to have some element of shalom bayis in their own homes, where they'll know how to express their frustration, their disappointment with their spouses and with their own children when they grow up. So instead of fighting and screaming and yelling and insulting and abusing each other, or even carelessly throwing words around and hurting each other's feelings, instead of doing all that, we will raise children who can conduct their interpersonal negotiations respectfully, even under the heat of emotion, so that the halacha actually ends up teach children to have self-control, which is something that, unfortunately, many of us are severely lacking. We have never been taught it ourselves. Self-control. How to be angry respectfully if somebody has tread on your territory. Okay, to have appreciation for the dignity of other people. To realize that we're not the only one, our view is not the only view, that it is possible that somebody else may have a different perception or may have made a mistake, and that's all right. That it's possible that other people are entitled to dignity and respect, that we have some element of humility instead of arrogance in our dealings. So we have children who go, it's not right, it's not fair, me and I, then they have the wrong idea. The world does not center around a child. We want the child to learn that there are other people, even two parents who are talking to each other. The halacha tells us don't interrupt them. Why? Because the parents are also important. The child is not the only one who is important. The child has to learn to wait and to respect somebody else. So we'll have self-control, we'll have appreciation, we'll have some element of humility, and most of all, we will have sensitivity to the feelings of other people. And these skills will take us a long way in personal life and the business world and everywhere that we go. So that's where we're aiming. The question is, how do we do it? How do we do it practically speaking? I'm going to focus on the halachas of speech. Okay? I'm going to just tell you, for example, 3 main halachas, which you may be familiar with already, and then tell you about how we would go to instill these behaviors in our homes. First of all, there is a mitzvah not to directly contradict a parent. It's the direct contradiction which is considered to be rude. For example, a child, let's say parent says, Miriam, it's time for dinner. Would you please come to the table? And Miriam, who's reading a book, says, just a minute. I'm not finished. I'll be there soon. Now, we'd be happy with that. She says she's going to come soon, so we're not too upset. But actually, we shouldn't be happy with that. Because the halacha says that the child needs to be asking a parent, not telling a parent. So the same thing when a husband, for example, says to his wife, take the shirts into the cleaners. Excuse me. It's more like, would it be okay, is it possible for you to take the shirts into the cleaners? We like to be asked, not told to do things. As adults, as children, as people, it is just respectful to ask, not tell. So the child really should be saying, is it possible I could come in a minute when I'm finished my page? Or may I please just finish my page and then come? And the parent can say yes or no, whatever. We'll go into that later. A second part of the halacha is responding to accusations that parents might make. For example, a parent goes out for the evening, comes back expecting to see that the child has done his homework, finds that the homework is not done, and the child is sitting there reading books or playing games or whatever. And the parent says, why didn't you do the homework that you were supposed to do while I was out? And the child says, well, I had a question. I couldn't do it. You weren't here to ask. So that is a harsh tone of voice, an unacceptable tone of voice, even if the reason itself was good, the child is supposed to, first of all, when he's being accused, like, why did you take the last cookie? Why did you not do the dishes? Why are your clothes on the floor? The child is supposed to say, may I please explain? That's what the halacha says. Just like when the king says to the general, why did you send those soldiers over to the east there? That was the undoing of everything. And the general says, Your Majesty, may I please explain? Before he answers, let's get you listening first. Let's set the scene for the explanation. And finally, there's halacha that the child is not allowed to correct a parent unless it's absolutely necessary. In certain cases, if it's essential, the child can do so in a questioning or a very respectful manner. But for example, let's say the parent says, Jason, it's Tuesday, it's bath night tonight. And Jason says, no, it's not. Remember, we switched it to Thursday this week. Okay? The child's smart. They're always smarter than us. He's right. We forgot, okay. But he's not supposed to say it like that. He's supposed to ask. Even though he knows for sure you did switch it to Thursday, he's supposed to say, Mom, is it possible we switched it to Thursday this week? He's supposed to ask in order to save the parent's dignity, to stop the parents from being embarrassed, not to make a fool out of your parent, perhaps be a little stupider than you. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to maintain the dignity of your parent and say, is it possible? So those are three main types of halakhas, and we'll look at in detail some more examples of that. But I'm going to tell you how we would get the child to do any of those things. And they're not even what we call outright horrible chutzpah. Okay, here the child is not telling you to, heaven forbid, shut up, go away, and slam the door in your face. He's not doing that. He's just not on target here. How do we get the child on target? The first thing is that we have to teach the child the halacha. And we do step number one, the teaching step, in a pleasant time. Not when the child has just made a big mistake, not when he's just yelled at you and screamed and had a whole fit. We do that maybe at the Shabbos table, maybe at bedtime story, or in the afternoon when you're playing. The teaching moment is a nice moment, just a friendly time where you're going to now teach the child that there is such a thing as speaking respectfully. And we're not going to just say to a child, you know what, from now on, I'd really like you to speak more nicely to me. Or I'd really like you to speak respectfully from now on. That's not enough. Okay? We can define it a little bit more specifically for a child. We can say, for example, you know what, from now on, I would like us to concentrate, all of us in the house, on our speech, on being more respectful towards each other. And that will usually include us as well, because even though we're adults, we're in process, we're growing, we're trying. Sometimes we're not so respectful. Sometimes, I don't know about you, but I've made a mistake once in a while, where you yelled or something, it wasn't so nice, okay? So we're all in process. And so we're going to say we're all going to work on raising our level of respect towards each other. And you can explain the halacha, and there are beautiful picture books, which if your children come to school here, they probably have some of these Derech Eretz books. Or there's the Shulchan Aruch, or there's the Gemara, whatever age the child is, appropriately take out those materials. And teach the child that there is such a halacha. And what respectfully means in speech is that a child asks, does not tell a parent, and a child uses a soft and pleasant tone of voice at all times. Just as the Ramban tells us, yes, soft and pleasant voice to all people at all times. And you can say, we're all going to work on that. Okay? We're going to work on using a pleasant tone of voice and being very careful with our words. So step number one was teaching. Step number two is called reminding. So now the child has heard it from you in a nice neutral situation, and reminding occurs when the child has made a mistake. So let's look at an example of reminding. The child says to you, can I please have a cookie? No, actually, let's start off a little worse. The child comes in the kitchen and says, I want a cookie. Then we remind the child at step two. And we just say, remember we learned yesterday or last Shabbos, when we talked last week about asking and not telling Mommy? Would you please try that again in an asking way? So then the child says, Mommy, can I please have a cookie? Whenever the child corrects himself, we jump right in with positive reinforcement. Oh, you asked so nicely. And then we give him, for the first month, the 1 month free introductory offer, okay, which is the answer is yes to every question that is put forward nicely. Okay, that only happens for a month. We fade that later. Okay, so the next step by the way, I'm going to give you the ideal, that was the ideal dialogue. Well, I'll give you the real dialogues that happen soon. We'll come back to it, okay? That doesn't always, because if we say, you see, it goes ideally as long as we do say yes. I'll tell you what happens the second month when we have to say no in a few minutes, okay? The next step is called prompting. So after you've done reminding for a while, you don't want to keep going, remember last month we learned this a lot. Remember last year, we're not going to do that forever, okay? We're going to do it for the first week or two. Remember we just talked about, and you can remind the child. After that, you go to prompting, which is a little short cue. Now you might just say something like asking, not telling, okay? Just a little short, doesn't have to be a whole big speech, and it's better if it's not a big speech. Or you might say tone of voice, just a little cue word, so the child says, I want this now. Tone of voice, just like, just come in there and remind him. You can also, for prompting, use a model. So the child says, I want a cookie, and you just model it. You say, Mommy dear, may I please have a cookie? Just show him the right way to say it. The next step, after the child knows what these little cues mean, is just plain blocking. You are blocking his disrespect. So at that point, which may be, let's say, a month into your teaching program, the child says, I want a cookie. And this time, you just raise your eyebrows. Or you just say, excuse me, I beg your pardon. Would you like to try that again? Okay, so at that point, he knows what you're referring to. If you do that too early in your teaching process, he doesn't know why you're saying, excuse me. All right, so now, if after all this excellent teaching, the child still doesn't catch on, we will then move into discipline. And I'll tell you about some specific techniques for discipline eventually. In other words, we can make a rule which says, we've been working on this a long time, and I find that you still come into the kitchen and say, I want a cookie. So from now on, when you come in and ask that way, there's going to be such and such consequence. And that'll help you remember to say the nicer way. Okay? So that's called discipline. That's if we need to. And hopefully we won't need to, because earlier on, really the bulk of our efforts in this regard is going to be with positive reinforcement. You said that so beautifully. You said that halakha. You said that with such Derech Eretz. Oh, I love the way you said that. Thank you for rephrasing that. That's really where our teaching is going to come from. All right, well, it's easy if everything goes well and the answer to everything is yes. All right? In fact, we never had any discipline problems anyways. If the answer was always yes, can I go sleep at my friend's house? Yes. Can I have a cookie? Of course. Can I have rollerblades? Yes, go get them. If the answer is yes, there's no problem in parenting. So why don't we just do that and call it a night? But sometimes the answer has to be no. All right, let's go back to I want a cookie, and we'll show you through the different stages how we can do it. I want a cookie. Remember we learned just yesterday about asking and not telling. Would you try that again, please, in an asking way? Could you say, Mommy, could I please have a cookie? Mommy, could I please have a cookie? Oh, you asked that so beautifully. Okay, now the answer has to be no. You know what? It's almost dinner time. I think that we're going to have our cookies after dinner today. By the way, just a little hint here. We do not use the word but in the teaching process. For example, if you say, you asked that so nicely, but I'm afraid we can't have a cookie. Okay, the reason for that is but is like an eraser. It just sort of like takes out all your praise. We put a full period after the end of the praise. You asked that so nicely. Period. Okay, that's what we say to the child. Or if you want, you can put and. And since you asked that so nicely, you can have your cookie right after dinner. Okay? So, you can use and, or you can use periods, but no buts in this. So anyways, you said that so nicely, we're going to have them after dinner today. So then the child says, no, I want it now. All right? You didn't like your answer. He's not expert in this yet. All right? Now, what happens to us at moments like that? What really happens to us, or what should happen to us, what really happens to us is we want to strangle the child in that moment, but we don't do that, because now we're parents, and we're mature, and we're adults, and we're trying to guide our children. Okay? And we're not looking at this as an issue of cookies. We are looking at this as an issue of chinuch. This is our opportunity to educate the child. Okay, so we're not going to be emotional about this. We're going to be thinking about this. The whole purpose of the cookie, that Hashem sent this cookie down to earth, was to help us teach the child about Derech Eretz, about respect, about this mitzvah. Okay? The cookie is just an instrument. So then we say to ourselves, then the child goes, but I want it now, okay, after we said so nicely good after dinner. And you think to yourself, teach me. So you say to him again, would you like to try that another way, please? And then the child says, is it possible I can have it now, please? He says something like that, if you're lucky. And then you have a chance to think about it, but hopefully you will commit to what you committed to before you ask that very nicely. The principal rule here is we do not answer any statements or questions put to us that have been put to us in a disrespectful way. For example, just anything the child says to you, can I have this, can I do that? If you didn't say it nicely, for example, let's say I have one on blocking here. The child opens the cupboard looking for some cookies or food to eat, opens the fridge as a teenager, opens the fridge, takes a look at it. Why don't you ever have anything good to eat here? Okay, so that's what he says to you. We don't answer these things. We don't say, oh, I'm sorry, darling, can't you find what you want? We don't answer the child. We always ask the child to say whatever he or she wants to say respectfully first, and then we'll carry on with the discussion. So let's go. That was reminding. Let's say with prompting, the next step. Aura, would you please run upstairs and get me my glasses? Aura is busy, she says, in a minute. Okay. Then if we're at the prompting stage, we might say, oh, Mommy, could I please do it in a minute? Okay, there's just a prompter. Or we might say, asking, not telling. And then Aura says, oh, yeah. Could I please do it in a minute? Oh, you asked that so nicely, Aura. Yes, you could do it in a minute. Okay? Or, if necessary, you asked that so nicely, Aura, and I'd appreciate it if you would do it right now. Okay, so whatever you need. Or the blocking one, the child is opening the fridge, seeing there's nothing in there. How come you never have anything good to eat in this house? Would you like to try that again, please? Okay, we just say to the child, we don't answer. Is it possible, Mother, that we don't have anything to eat in this house? Thank you for rephrasing that, darling. You have a point. Maybe we should go shopping together, or whatever you want to say. Okay? So those are some examples. Some general principles in this process of education. When we are making an accusation towards our child, why didn't you do the dishes? Why didn't you do the homework? Why is that laundry on the floor when I've asked you to put it in the laundry basket? Why is this mess in the living room when it was time to clean up, etc.? When you make your accusations, be very careful how you do that. Because it's very embarrassing, as I've experienced in my home a lot of times. Why does this cupboard look like this? Is it possible, Mama, that you're raising your voice? That's what happens when your kids get a little bit better than you at this, okay? You don't want to be a fool in your own home. You want to be the adult, the mature one, the responsible one here, who can model these things. If you are yelling at your children, what is this mess here? Okay, you are inviting them to say, I didn't do it. You're inviting them to talk back to you. You are putting a stumbling block in front of them. So you have to be very tentative. Even when you smell the stuff burning in the kitchen, you turn to your partner who's cooking and you say, darling, is it possible that something is burning on the stove? Okay, speak. We have to model this between spouses too. Not, what the heck's going on here? You don't talk like that to your partner because the children will just emulate you. So once we start in with this respectful stuff, it has to go across the board. The whole family has to start being very sweet and nice and respectful. It's very hard to carry it off otherwise because your children will ask you what's going on. Why are you allowed to shout? Why does Daddy get to shout at you? Why does Uma, whatever, raise her voice? That can't go. We're going to have to model the whole thing. So we say, is it possible that that laundry there is yours? Is it possible that you didn't put away the dishes that I asked you to put away? When we know full well that the kid didn't do it, that's how we ask. Just like the child who knows full well that we made some foolish error will politely save our feelings and ask, is it possible? So we want to model the whole issue of being respectful, which means that we won't be able to yell at our children anymore. From now on, when you go home tonight, that's it. Finished. You cannot raise your voice anymore. The question is, how are we going to accomplish this? But, you can't teach your children not to scream at you if you're screaming at them. That's just basic reality. We know that. If it does accidentally happen after tonight, what you can do is you can say to them, excuse me, I'm sorry I raised my voice. Let me try that again. Okay, in other words, if you catch your voice going, what? And then you hear it, you go, excuse me, let me try that again. Okay? And that's what you do. You can really do that. It's all right. Because you want the children to catch themselves doing that. When they open a big mouth to you, you want them to go, wait, I'll try that again. All right? I'm going to model that. We're not perfect. We're not trying to be perfect. We're just trying to get better, all of us. So sometimes we're going to have to just wait until we feel calm enough to handle a particular disciplinary scene. For example, the child might be saying something very inappropriate, might be doing something very inappropriate. We come in. Very few things are emergencies that must be dealt with immediately. Except for the child running into the street or setting the house on fire, very few things really require our immediate right now attention. It's more important for us to remain calm when we are dealing with the child's misbehavior or disrespect or whatever than to deal with it immediately. So if necessary, we'll just look at what's going on and walk away and take our time and think about that. I see the two children are tearing each other's hair out. While they seem alive and well, I'm just going to go over here and think about what I want to do about it first, and then I'll come back and intervene. Or, unless the child's being very destructive or very dangerous, most things can wait at least a couple of minutes for us to calm ourselves down. And many, many things can wait till the next day or several hours later that day. The point is, do not lock heads with your child. Because when you are locking heads with each other, horns, whatever they say, and you are yelling at each other and having a fit with each other, then we have no parent in the room. Then we have two children fighting. And it's very bad for the child because he feels abandoned. He does not have an adult to guide him. He does not have a role model. He has nobody showing him what self-control looks like. We have to model what that looks like. So if we're not feeling in control because what we see has made us so furious, or the child that says, I hate you, and I want to kill you, and I'm going to kill myself and run away from home. They say these things just to see what will happen to us. Okay. So at those moments, we say, excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink of water. I'll be back in a few hours. Okay. You just excuse yourself and calm down and start thinking about what has happened and what you want to do about it. And you let the child know when the discussion is going to happen. You come back, you say, you know what, we're going to talk about what happened earlier. We'll speak about it tonight, just before bedtime. We'll have a little chat about that. So that you are controlling when these disciplinary conversations are going to happen. You are controlling the mood that you'll be in, because by that time you'll have had several beers and be more relaxed or whatever. You'll be able to handle it. You will just get yourself in a state where you are the parent in control and the child is waiting for you to present what you have to do. We don't come in impulsively with our emotions running high and try to tell a child anything, because that doesn't work. That puts us into this angry, childlike state ourselves. Sometimes all it takes really is a few seconds to calm ourselves down by breathing slowly and counting to 10, as Grandma used to say. Breathe in, do that slowly 10 times, and then deal with whatever the child's doing. Okay? Most important, we don't want to be impulsive. We just want to show the child, you see the child doing something, or he said something very disrespectful, and you can say to him, I'm just going to breathe, count to 10 for a few seconds, and calm myself down and think about what we want to do about this. So you are modeling, you are demonstrating to the child, how do I get myself out of this state where I feel like strangling you? How do I get myself into a calmer, more centered state where I can handle myself? You're showing him, and you're doing it to yourself. And then you're thinking during that time. One thing that's very important for us not to do is to tell the child that he's being chutzpahdik, or that he's being rude, because this is a form of programming him. The more he hears how rude or chutzpahdik he is, the more rude and chutzpahdik he becomes. So when the child opens up a very big mouth, we don't tell him, you're opening up a big mouth, you are disgusting, you're obnoxious, you're rude, you're chutzpahdik, I don't want to hear that chutzpah. Get that word out of our houses. Okay? We don't want to hear that. The only word we want to hear is polite and respectful. So if the child is, in fact, being rude and disrespectful, what we will tell the child is, would you please say that in a more polite way? Would you please say that in a respectful way? Please use your respectful words. Please use your calm voice or your soft voice. Okay? Because the word chutzpah itself, or disrespect, heard over and over and over and over again for 20 developmental years, simply gives the child the image of himself as being chutzpahdik or disrespectful. It's a form of hypnosis. Okay? So we don't want to do that. We want to use only the word respect or polite. It's important for us to be consistent. Once we start demanding that our children speak to us properly, that is asking and not telling, and using a soft tone of voice, then we have to do that all the time. We can't do that Monday, Thursday, next week, okay? It's got to be like every time they open their mouth, we are insisting that they open their mouth out with respect to us. Before we go any further in the conversation, they have to be saying it correctly. And it's like sometimes we do some things for a few days in parenting, for 3 days or 4 days or whatever. It works good, then it stops working, then we give up. Right away we give up. And we try some other newfangled parenting technique or something. That doesn't work, as we all know. We have to be consistent for 20 years. It takes 20 years to raise a human being properly. So fine, we're going to do it day by day by day, conversation by conversation. The children will know that we do not accept verbal abuse, that we have enough respect for ourselves, that we will not accept the child verbally abusing us. That is shouting at us, whining to us, insulting us, name-calling, or any of the things that the Torah says is verbal abuse. We can look to Rabbi Pliskin's book. He has a book called The Power of Words, and he'll list there in alphabetical order all the various forms of verbal abuse, and we will accept none of them, because we are demonstrating to the children that we have respect for ourselves, and we have respect for them. And we don't speak to them in that verbally abusive way, and we don't expect them to speak to us in that way. Not only do we not expect them, we do not permit it to happen. Every conversation has to be respectful. Okay, so those are some general principles. What might help us is the use and the discipline of the 2 times rule, which I'll just review here. I know that a lot of you are familiar with it, but I'll just briefly, for those of you who are not. In order for us to stay in a rational state of mind when we're working with our children, we need to have options and tools. We can't be helpless. When we feel helpless, that's when we go berserk. That's when we yell at our children. Like, I don't know what to do with you. Okay, fine, have the cookie. Have 1,000 cookies. I don't care. I hate you anyways. Like, after a while, when children get what they want by badgering us, by wearing us down, okay, we don't like them. We may stop disciplining them altogether because everything is too much of a hassle. I don't want to get a fight with you. You know what? Do what you want. I don't want to fight. After a while, we stop becoming parents to them because we don't want to fight with them. We never should have been fighting with them to begin with. Okay? We should have been educating them. We should have been disciplining them. The idea was not to fight. Using the 2 times rule, we can discipline our children. The mashal I use for this, and again, many of you have heard this, but just a quick review. When we are speeding along the highway and a policeman comes to tell us that we're going too fast, the way he disciplines us is the way we want to discipline our children. He just, writes a little thing on a piece of paper and hands us this little yellow piece of paper and tells us to have a good day. And then he drives off. And we are left with $135 short and 2 demerit points, whatever. And we've got this yellow piece of paper called the ticket. And he has effectively disciplined us without lecturing us about our bad driving habits, about the dangers of what we've just done. He hasn't gotten mad at us. He hasn't emotionally rejected us. He hasn't yelled at us. He's just been very pleasant about the whole thing. And then he drives off. And now we're stuck with this little yellow piece of paper. Now, what do we do with that? Most of us will go and pay this money to the bank or where, to where that money goes to. And why are we doing that? It's not because we do feel very sorry that we were speeding along the highway. That's not why we're doing it. We're doing it, we march ourselves to the bank voluntarily. We take that money out of our account and we give it to the treasurer because we are afraid of what will happen if we don't. Okay? The ticket is always the opening move. And after the ticket, there are higher price tickets. And ultimately, I'm going to say there's jail. Okay? Now, if we don't pay our tickets, let's think of it as we can go to jail. None of us would pay our tickets if there was no second level punishment. Because we're not that morally advanced, right? Now, we could say, why do adults need this kind of discipline? Same thing for parking at parking meters. Why don't we just say to the mature world around us, there's a lot of people who live in Toronto, and if we all share the parking meters for an hour each, we'll all have a turn, okay? So could you just park for an hour and then move away? Why do we need tickets to get this through to people? Because even adults are so, I don't know what the word is, not clever, whatever it is, that we need tickets to help us not speed and risk our lives and the lives of other people, tickets to help us share the parking meters. We need discipline. Our children need discipline as well. What if we're very annoyed that the policeman gave us a ticket and we rip it up and we spit in his face to show him a thing or two? Okay, what happens if we do that? He might take his gun out and shoot us, I don't know. But, you get a bigger punishment. You cannot spit in the policeman's face. He represents the authority system. We are not allowed to defy the authority system. If you defy the authority system, you're going to get a real big punishment. So using the same two-tiered model in our home, we also can smile at our children and hand out tickets, okay? The work goes like this, in the 2 times rule. First of all, we have to know that you could get a ticket. In other words, you can't have policemen driving up and down Bathurst here saying, okay, no driving on this road on Tuesday, you're fined $200. Hey, wait a second. I didn't know you can drive on this road on Tuesday. Well, now you know, don't you? Okay, now we can't, they don't do it like that, okay? You have to know what the consequence is going to be, beforehand. First, you have to be warned that there is from now on no driving on Tuesday allowed, and if you do drive on Tuesday, you'll get a $200 fine, okay? They can't just come out of the blue like we do with our children. What? You broke that window? Well, now you're grounded for a week. I didn't know about that. Well, you should have. And now you do, okay? No. We can't do it like that, okay? We are always warning the children that if they make a mistake the first time they broke that window because they were playing in the wrong place, then we say to them, you know what? This is not a good place to play. And from now on, if you play in this place with that kind of ball, there's going to be such and such a ticket, okay? We tell them that. So on the next time that they do that, or from now on, actually, they're in line for the ticket. In the 2 times rule, the very first time is really, unless the activity is dangerous or very destructive, the first time is just giving information. For example, using the 2 times rule with these halachas of speech, we could say to the child, I find it unacceptable for you to swear at me, okay? We don't do that. It's an aveira. We don't speak like that. We have to keep our mouths clean and speak purely all the time. If you're not happy with what I'm doing to you or whatever, you can say, Mommy or Abba, I'm not happy with what you're saying. That's permissible. You can use an I message. I'm not happy about it. Or I am frustrated. Or I'm disappointed. Those things are permissible. It is not permissible for you to say you hate me or to call me bad names. Okay? So that's the first time, and that's called giving information. The second time the child opens an inappropriate mouth and calls you a nasty name, the second time you say, you know what? I told you before that we have to say it with I. I feel disappointed. I feel unhappy. I'm not, I'm frustrated about this. And that we are not allowed to call anybody names at any time. From now on, if you call me a name like that or say it in this unpleasant way, then such and such a ticket will happen. That's the structure of the 2 times rule for teaching a child not to be outrageous with his speech. So then on the 3rd time, the child, says whatever, calls you a nasty name or tells you he hates you, then you say to him, that'll cost you such and such. Now with children, our tickets are not the same as for adults. With teenagers, you could use money. For us, it's always money. They don't take away our car when we're speeding. They take away our money. They give us what is called an illogical consequence. Because what's our money got to do with our poor driving habits? But our money motivates us. We care about our money. So when we're dealing with our children, we have to find tickets, so to speak, that motivate them. Removal of possessions, that's taking away anything that they own. And the halacha is that you own everything that they own until they're paying you room and board. So that even though they bought their baseball bat with their own allowance, or grandma gave it to them for their birthday, or they won it as a prize, however they got it, you can take it away from them. So you take it away from them, and up to 24 hours. You're not trying to torture anybody. That's a possible ticket. That's removal of possessions. Or removal of privileges. The bat stays right there, but they're not allowed to play with it. Okay? So you can take it away, but they're not allowed to play with it. Or removal of non-nutritious food items, like their junk food. 1 snack per ticket. You've lost your snack in your lunch, or you've lost your Shabbos party, or you've lost your dessert. Not all of that, just 1. Time out, there's renewal time, which is sending a child to his room to calm down, which you can do, but that's not a ticket. That's a $5 ticket, unless you've designed their room like a jail cell. Most people's rooms are very pleasant. There's toys, there's books, etc. That's not a $135 ticket. A constrained time out is where the child has to stand against a wall or in a corner and stand for the number of minutes of his age, which is appropriate for children up until about the age of 9 or 10. And just stand there and look at the wall and be bored for 5 minutes if you happen to be a 4-year-old with a big mouth, okay? And then there's addition of work, which is literally more work, like you didn't clean up the laundry, so now you can clean up the whole room. or there's over-learning, which is we're going to practice putting laundry in the laundry basket 30 times. That's you do it 30 times. It's about the number of minutes of the child's age in practicing something. Or we're going to write out something, anything. You can write out an action plan. You can open up a safer, look at Rabbi Pliskin's book on improper speech, copy out a page if you're an old enough child. Writing out, the number of things that would take you about the number of minutes of your age. You're not trying to keep them writing for half an hour, but a 10-year-old could write 10 minutes, a 12-year-old could write 12 minutes of something or other. Mostly to bore them. It's not really a very educational process, even if you have them write an action plan, which is, what I did wrong, what I'll do next time in this circumstance. That's a little bit more educational, but mainly the ticket value is the child would rather be playing than writing these things out. So those are examples of tickets. For this young child who does not pay his tickets, we have to go to jail. So in other words, from now on, when you call anybody in his family stupid or idiot, as the children will do to their siblings, for example, and sometimes to you if you're not lucky, so then if the child opens a mouth and says those sorts of things, from now on, that's going to cost you 1 page of lines, let's say, for an 8-year-old, for example. And I want them by bedtime, which is, for you, 8 o'clock tonight. And then you don't say anything to him, and you said this at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you always have to give a deadline for this kind of assignment. And the child, it comes to be 7:30, no lines are forthcoming. So you say to the child at about 7:45, because you know this is only going to take him 8 minutes anyways, you say to him, you know what, I'm just reminding you, your lines are due in half an hour, and if I don't get them in half an hour, you can forget the lines, and such will happen instead. So we're going to talk about jail at that point. Same thing for the child who you sent to the corner. From now on, when you do this kind of behavior, you're going to have to stand in the corner for 5 minutes. So he does it. So then you say, now you have to go stand in the corner for 5 minutes, and he runs the other way, and you say to him, I'm going to count to 5. And if you're not in the corner by 5, you can skip the corner, and instead, such and such will happen. And when we count, we're always counting in a very even, quiet tone of voice. It's like, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. We do not go, that's 3.5. Do you want to lose your such and such? That's 4. I'm warning you, and you're more worried than they are that they're going to lose their such. Don't worry about it, okay? Let them worry about it. We're not trying to rev ourselves up. We want to stay very even-keeled. So, if we want to count to 5 because that gives them time to change their mind. Often if we go to 3, that's 1, 2, 3, that's it, you lost it. No, we don't want to go so fast, okay? That's 1, that's 2, up to 5, and see if the kid will go to the corner. And if he doesn't, we're escalating. We're not trading in one punishment for another. We are picking a ticket level and then a jail level. And jail, by the way, tickets are just like slightly annoying, but jail should make you feel very uncomfortable. Like, how could I do this to this poor child? For example, we're all going to the baseball game tonight, and you know what? If you don't get the corner, you could forget the corner, but you'll be staying home with a babysitter instead of coming with us to the baseball game. How could I do that to your child? You could do it because if you do it properly, you only have to do it once or twice per kid. And if you have witnesses, then they all learn vicariously. And it lasts them like a measles shot for about 10 years, okay? So you want to do it properly. Now, another thing that we want to do, and when we have that tool, we will be calmer and less frantic and less helpless in our discipline. And if we use that, we'll be in a thinking mode. Now, we want to also stop arguing. A child is not allowed, as we said before, to contradict his parents. Now, the first time, let's say the child says, I want a cookie. So we say to him, I beg your pardon, depending on what stage he's at. He says, is it possible I could have a cookie, Mommy? So then you say, oh, you asked that so nicely. You know what? I think that we're going to have an after dinner. It's too close to dinner right now. Now the child says, it gets mad. He says, but I want it now. Or maybe he says, but is it possible, Mommy, that you promised we could have one this afternoon before dinner? Okay, so we sometimes make mistakes. And we go, yeah, you're right. I did do that. So on round 2, and that is called round 2, you could change your mind. Because maybe the child has a good point that you didn't think about. But if you go 10 rounds, for sure the child will have a good point you didn't think about, because they're always smarter than us, and they will wear us down. But there is a halakha that the child is not allowed to argue with you. So we have to help children not to argue with us. Let's say that he didn't have a good point. Let's say on his round 2, all he said is, but I want one. Okay. And you say, excuse me, would you try that again? Mommy, is it possible I could please have one? Okay, fine. So he's asked to he's not perfect, but let's say he's in process there. His tone of voice wasn't very good. But, you're not changing your mind, because this time he didn't have a good reason. On round one, he said, could I have a cookie? And he comes up to you even politely. Mommy, may I please have a cookie? And you say, you know what, we're going to have dinner very soon. I think we'll have it later. And then he says, but Mommy, is it possible I could have one pretty please, with sugar and honey and salt and pepper, whatever, you know. And you say, you're asking that very nicely, darling, but I really want us to have them after dinner tonight. Excuse me, we didn't forget the but. And I really want us to have them after dinner tonight. We're not having them now. Okay. So you said you're a bit nicely, but he's not finished. He's going to wear you down. He's doing it a million different ways. He can be nice about it. Please, 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 Mommy, I promise I'll clean up the house. I'll do everything. I'll take care of the baby. I'll do everything you want me to do from now on. I know, honey, but don't. Now we're on round 3. And you're still saying no. Or he might get, frantic and try different techniques, like, if you don't give me one, I'm running away from home. I'll never speak to you again, and so on. They'll try everything. I'm going to smash the baby. I'm going to break the house down, whatever. They'll try whatever, till they get the one that says, okay, have the cookie. All right? And what we've taught them to do then is how to argue. We have taught them to argue by engaging in this conversation with them. After round 2, and I say it this way, round 1 is, Mommy, can I whatever? Okay. And it helps us not to get into trouble if we think about an answer first. Instead of just impulsively giving our favorite answer, which is no, okay? Instead of doing that, we first of all put ourselves into a yes mode. In general, our answer should be yes. In general, we're trying to be yes because if we're no people, children learn how to argue with us because first you have to wear them down, you have to do this, you have to do that, and I know how to get them to say yes in the end. We don't want to train children to do that. We want to be generally yes people, but sometimes the answer is going to be no. And one of the things that we can do to help ourselves and help them is think before we answer anything. The child comes up to you. It's just like a lawyer coming up to you, isn't it? And before you sign those papers, you say, let me read this document, okay? So the child says, could I please whatever? Your answer should be, just a minute, let me think about that. Okay, whether it's can I have a cookie or could I sleep over at my friend's house or could I go to camp next year or could I have a new car? Whatever the child's asking, it's let me think about that for a minute. And think for a minute, okay, before you answer. That will save you a lot of trouble. So then you're thinking, you know what, it's almost dinner time. So you say to yourself, you say to him, actually, at this point, I thought about it, I thought about it, and I want us to have our cookies for dessert tonight, not before dinner. It will ruin our appetites. Okay? That whole conversation is called round 1. But you can make a mistake. And allowing for human error, I say that let the child have one question. That whole conversation is called round 1. But you can make a mistake. And allowing for human error, I say that let the child have one question. But Mommy, is it possible that you promised we could have those cookies before dinner today? And sometimes you do make a mistake. And this gives you an out. Okay? So on round 2, you can change your mind. But if the child did not have a good thing to say on round 2, you don't have to listen to every argument. Because the thing is, the child can listen to the type of good things. We don't want to say on round 1, do it because I said so. That makes us look stubborn. It makes us look arrogant. But on round 2, it's like, you know what, I gave you an answer. And that is, it's people over there who don't like my answer, then you do it because I said so, because that's the real reason you're doing it, because the child is supposed to obey their parents. So that doesn't happen until round 2. But the child, let's say, goes on to round 3, round 4, he's trying to wear you down. We have to get out of that somehow. There are different ways to get out of it. First of all, we have to be careful not to change our mind under any circumstances once we're hitting round 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If the child sees that you will change your mind if he just goes long enough and hard enough, then he'll always go long and hard. So you never change your mind after round 2. Okay? Round 2, you thought about it twice, and you've stuck to your answer, and that is the end. Never change your mind after that point. Actually, don't discuss it any further after round 2. You can just excuse yourself by saying, I've answered you twice, the conversation's now over, and leave. If the child follows you around with, but, and you haven't thought of, and this and that, and this and that, you're out of there anyways. I'm not talking about it. Don't keep saying that 20 times either. Just stop talking about it. If you want, excuse me, you can use the broken record technique if you want to talk about it. If you're finding it too hard to use the systematic ignoring technique, which is ignoring the child, you can use the broken record technique, which is to say your answer over and over and over again in the same way. No, we're going to have them after dinner. But, no, we're going to have them after dinner. But, no, we're going to have them after dinner. Until the child gets sick of you and walks away, okay? So that's called the broken record. Or you can bring in the negative consequences. Excuse me, My voice is rapidly fading. Let's go to drink. The discipline technique for this is, you know what? You argue with me after I've answered you twice. From now on, after I've answered you twice, if you continue to ask me, that's going to cost you such and such ticket. Okay? So you can do that as well to stop the arguing process. But we have to be alert to the arguing process, to know that it's happening and to get ourselves out of there. We have to be aware that some children are more difficult to teach these things to than other children. Children with learning disabilities, attention deficit disorders, and various other kinds of, call them handicaps of various kinds, they're less easy to educate altogether because they are less receptive to rewards and less receptive to punishments and care less about what you're saying to them. So they take a longer, harder time. And that in the family, each child is different. Some children are very easy. Some children are very difficult. However, you've got 20 years, and you can make improvement with all of them slowly, gradually, over that length of time. Don't give up just because you're not getting instant results. Let's look at just finally a couple of other categories of things to be on the alert for when our children are speaking to us. Another form of disrespect is when they ignore us. So we say to a child, it's dinner time, could you come to the table? Nobody looks up from his book. Okay? So that's also disrespectful and requires our attention. Or they have figured a way around us, and they use a delay tactic. They say, yes, it's dinner time, would you please come to the table? Yeah, I'll be right there. And then they don't move. That's the one that husbands use when their wives ask them, could you please fix the fence? Yes, I'll do it tonight, or whatever, And, it's the yes, because I don't want to fight with you. Yes, because I know how to get you off my back. Yes, I'll say yes, because then you'll stop asking me. Okay, so children learn that too. And we have to be alert to that. And when the child is not moving, then we have to intervene. Telling parents what to do. So when children say, when the 12-year-old says to the 8-year-old, to the parent rather, why do you let the little ones get away with that? You shouldn't do that, That's not how you raised us. I think you should do blah, blah, blah. Okay. You know how smart they are when they're 12. So we have to watch that too. So children are not allowed to tell parents what to do. Rather, you can ask a child if you want their advice, but you need to inform the children that you're not accepting unsolicited advice. Accusing parents. So children come up and say, what? You didn't take my suit to the cleaners? I asked you to take my suit to the cleaners, and how come you didn't take it? Okay, so that's child accusing parents. So we don't go, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'll take it right now. No. Even if you did forget, even if you made a big mistake, okay, we don't apologize. First of all, we ask the child to rephrase that. Would you like to try that again in a more respectful way? Even if you were wrong and you made a big mistake, after the child says, is it possible you didn't take my suit to the cleaners? Then you say, you know what, you're right, I didn't, and I'm really sorry. Okay, if you made a mistake, so you apologize. We have to teach that. We have to model that. Impolite responses, like you say to the child, is it possible you left your laundry on the floor? The child says, so? Okay. No. Okay, we don't accept any of those kinds of things. Would you like to try that again in a more respectful way? Punishing parents. Okay, so children sometimes don't like what we have done or what we've said. So if they're toddlers, they may hit and kick and bite. If they're older kids, they may try to lock you out of your own house or lock the door or whatever, or if they're if you don't like the fact that they've received a punishment, for example, they may scream for an hour in order to show you that you better not dare punish them again, right? To make your life so miserable that when you try to give them a ticket, you'll learn not to give them a ticket because they'll make your life that miserable, okay? That's called defying authority in the way of spitting in a policeman's face, and that needs to be addressed also. So there's lots of different kinds of disrespect that go on routinely in our homes. We have to be on the alert for all of that, not to accept any of that, to model the respectful process ourselves, to get a lot of sleep so that we can do that, and to study, together as a family, together these halachas and work on it together in process. I'll take some questions now from the trenches. What's the youngest age that we can start educating our children in respectful behaviors? If a child is old enough to talk, he's old enough to begin to speak respectfully. your little 2-year-olds can, can begin to say, "May I please be excused from the table." You can teach them right from the beginning, to say it in a nice tone of voice, or to say it with some kind of respect. Yes.
What you suggest is they don't understand or recognize what they're doing is disrespectful. The tone of voice is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. It's not really specific to them. You say, "I don't think that tone of voice is respectful." And they don't recognize what's wrong with it. They're just expressing their feelings.
Yeah. Okay, the question is, sometimes children don't realize that the tone of voice, for example, that there's anything wrong with it. They think they're just talking, they're just energetic, and they're just thinking loud. In fact, a lot of adults think the same thing. So the test is, how does the other person feel? So if you feel, uncomfortable in the presence of that tone of voice, that's reason enough for the child to adjust his tone of voice. One hint about that is if it's loud, it's not particular. Well, it depends on the culture that you live in too, but basically a defiant tone of voice is what we're trying to prevent, where the child is, it's not that he's just lively and excited and enthused, it's that he's angry and that he's belligerent and he's pushy. So it's hard to teach them, but we can sort of model it for them and do our best to convey that what it is we're looking for. The Ramban says soft and gentle, pleasant tone of voice to everybody. That's what Chazal tell us we're supposed to aim for. It's a soft and pleasant tone of voice. I think they'll catch on, if you keep showing it to them. Yes?
You were saying most things can wait 10 minutes an hour.
Yes.
This past week, I had to get to work, alone in the house, had to get the kids out to carpool. Yeah. Daughter's tantruming, locks herself in the washroom. Yeah. We're already 5 minutes late for school, etc., etc. Yeah. What's the next step, or how do you avoid?
Okay, the question is, in the mad morning rush, where we're trying to get out the door, and things are not going well between the children. They're fighting, they're screaming, they're being disobedient, they're having temper tantrums. In this case, child locks herself in the bathroom, whatever's going on. How do we conduct ourselves in this beautiful, respectful manner to show them what Derech Eretz and love and authority is all about? Okay. Now, a very important thing before we got out of bed was to think about this. While we were still lying in bed, we should be thinking about our parenting tone that we want to set. How are we going to make this morning go well? Okay, because really, for school-age children, their whole experience of us is at these beautiful times, between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning, and between 4:30 and 8:30 at night, let's say. These beautiful times, when in the morning we're rushing to get out of the house, and at the end of the day we're all tired and fetchy and just exhausted from our day. Those are our parenting times. That's when they're learning all about midos tovos, about derech eretz, about love, about everything good that we have to offer them. Right at those times. We need to think about that before we get out of bed. That's hint number one, okay? Lie in bed and meditate about that. So you're meditating, and you're blissful, and you get out of bed, and it's, "Good morning, everybody." And they throw something at you, right? Okay? So, you can't control them. They're children. You can only control yourself. And you're going to kind of show them what that looks like. So you're determined to hand out a great deal of positive attention every morning. That will help. Okay? The less you talk in the morning, the better it is. How many times do you have to tell the children, "The bus is coming, the carpool's coming, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. We're going to be late, we're going to be late, we're going to be late." How many times do you have to say that each morning? Just say it once at the beginning of the year. That covers you. Okay? So you get up. If possible, I always recommend to people, start humming. Be humming with a little tune so they think that you're relaxed and happy. Even though there might be something else going on inside of you, they'll think that things are calm and under control when you are humming and not talking to them. And you're moving through your morning. That is another hint. Look like you're pleasant, in control, and happy, and not busy with them. And, sort of moving through the morning, saying as little as possible, handing them a coat if necessary, or handing them a pair of socks, or just dressing them without words if that young, or just like not. Your main focus is, how can I be pleasant and happy here this morning? Now, we're under a time pressure in the morning. It's a challenge to us. This is not going to happen instinctively. We have to plan this out, how it's going to happen. Okay? If a child has a tantrum, locks herself in the bathroom, and you have to be at work, just like what happens here, the best we can do in a situation like that is say from the other side of the door, "I'm going to count to 5. And if you're not out by the time I count to 5, then I'm going to get the screw thing, and I'm going to open the door, if you're able to do that. And I'll have to bring you up. But since you didn't come out voluntarily, such and such ticket is going to happen when we get home tonight." Okay? It can't happen right then because you're all on the way to school. So when we get home tonight, you'll be in bed half an hour earlier, or you'll be writing out lines, or you'll be, whatever, losing your computer privileges, whatever you want, okay? that's what's going to happen later. Okay, and that's the best you can do in a situation like that. But the main thing is thinking it through. And when you're coming back at 4:30, or when they're coming back at 4:30, think again. They're coming in. What are we going to do to make this a wonderful parenting experience for all of us? Okay, it's not going to happen spontaneously to anybody. All right, other questions?
I have a very bossy child who thinks that we and him on the same level.
Yeah.
You can tell me, if you're not going to listen to me, you're going to have time out.
That's right.
How do you handle that?
Okay, so this is the child who thinks that he's on, well, he thinks he's either your mother or he's your peer. And he says, if you don't listen to me, you're going to have time out. Okay, the child talks like that to us. You know, we just have to correct the child. They will try that. And they'll try that not only, you know, at 2, but at 15 also. This is, you know, some people think that 15-year-olds, for example, are now adults and don't require our supervision anymore. They're teenagers and they're hormonal, and therefore we can't do anything with them. That is a write-off of 10 years of potent time to be educating our children. Between 10 and 20, they are still educable. And certainly between 0 and 10, it's up to us to just correct their impression. You know, we can't speak like that to a mummy, and we don't tell a mummy or a abba or a daddy, whatever, you know, that they're going to be punished. Okay? That's not your job. It's our job to tell them what their job is and isn't. Okay? That we have to take that leadership role and not be afraid of accepting the mantle of authority and responsibility in raising our children. If nothing else, we have 20 years on them. We may not be smarter, but we're 20 years older. It gives us 20 more years of experience. And we have assigned responsibility from Hashem to raise them. So that we are going to take that upon ourselves and do the best with it that we can. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to be accepting responsibility that, you know what, the reason you can't eat that cookie or sleep at your friends or go on that skiing trip or whatever it is that you want to do, I am using my best parental judgment here. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm not trying to ruin your life. I'm trying to guide you, and, you know, you have to have trust in yourself and convey that to children. In the olden days, parents kind of felt they always knew best and maybe didn't listen quite enough or were not maybe warm enough. Okay, so we want to combine the authority of, yes, I don't always know everything, but I'm trying my best to guide you, and I'm making my best guess decision here. And I love you, and I'll listen to your concerns, and I'll respect your feelings, and it'll be a two-way street as far as that goes. Okay. Other questions? Yes.
Excuse me, assuming we go home and try some of these techniques tomorrow.
Yes.
One of our insights to children will say, whenever you go to a lecture,
Yeah.
always come home and you try it on us.
Yes. Okay, the question is, you know, you come home, you try a new technique, and the children say, oh, there you go, trying out new techniques again. That's right. I do try because I'm always trying to, you know, in my way of being with you, I'm always trying to grow. The Torah tells us we should always grow. In fact, this new fancy technique that we're going to try out now is right from the Shulchan Aruch. It's quite old, actually. I just went there, we're going to learn the angle on it. And this is what we're going to do from now on for the next 20 years. We're really going to stick with this because this is halakha. This is not actually midos tovos. This whole thing of speaking respectfully and stuff, this is something of treating our parents with respect. This is in the 10 Commandments. This is necessary. This is not optional, like if I'm in the mood today, yes or no. This is our responsibility to get our children to know how to do this with us, and then they'll know how to do it. Imagine they raised years. Is it possible I could have this? Is it possible that this is wrong? Whatever. Is it possible you made a mistake? That he spoke with such forethought and such self-control, and then you sent him out into the world of marriage with his partner. He's all set up to succeed because he's not jumping down anybody's neck, and he's not having a temper tantrum. He's not screaming at his own kids. He's ready for shalom bayis, which this world is very short on, unfortunately. Okay, so this is a gift that we have to give our children. So if you go home and try out any of these techniques and say, yes, I am trying this, and we're going to try it for the rest of our lives, because this is our mandate as Jews. Other questions? Well, we know how to do it now, and I wish you all the best of luck. If you have any questions, I'll leave my business cards up here somewhere, and you can call me for little tips and whatever. And that's it. Okay.